welcome to the InterPlex. Arnab Bhattacharya is an Indian condensed matter physicist and science communicator. He is a research professor at India's prestigious Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, where his group focuses on semiconductor optoelectronics. And since 2021, he has been the director of the Homi Bhabha Centre for Science Education, HBCSE. Amongst his many public science outreach and education initiatives, since 2009, Bhattacharya has pioneered, curated, and hosted Chai and Wai, a popular fortnightly science café in Mumbai. In 2017, he was awarded the Indira Gandhi Prize for the Popularization of Science by the Indian National Science Academy. In our expansive and illuminating InterDialogue, we spoke about various interrelated ideas, initiatives, and concerns around science communication, education, and outreach, both within the Indian and global contexts. We also spoke about his research into nanomaterials, the possibilities of India building domestic industries around advanced technologies such as semiconductors, solar cells, and nuclear energy, and his collaborations during the COVID-19 pandemic, in which he helped to develop low-cost solutions for decontaminating N95 masks for their reuse by first responders. Beyond his many basic science and science outreach activities, we spoke about the importance of work-life balance and his love of Indian classical music, nature, and cooking.
Very nice being here with you, Arnab. Thank you for these last days.
Yes, Henrik, I hope you've been having a good time.
Yes, very much so. Had a great time at HBSE. Yeah?
CSE.
And just
don't worry, half the people think we're HSBC and have half a mind to approach them saying, give us some money. You're getting free publicity.
That's good. Any publicity is good publicity, so that works. So I'd like to start just maybe with a little bit of a background, as you devote a lot of attention to inspiring and educating students and the general public about science. How is it that you got interested yourself in science?
In science or in science popularization, or both?
Science.
Science, I think I've been the traditional geek as a kid. I mean, I was very happy to be left with books in a library, or my family, of course, had a science background. They're steeped in science. My uncle, father's elder brother, used to be the professor and the sort of principal of a small college in Kolkata. And every summer vacation or winter vacation, when I was shipped to my family out there, I would rather spend time in the lab, in the chemistry lab over there, and he had actually no problems with me doing it. He would sort of leave me alone, do what he wanted, kind of stuff. And so I was always encouraged to, play with things. And after that, I got interested for some reason in electronics. I don't know why. And I was known as the guy who would open up things and take things apart. And if something didn't work at home, the first thing would be like, "Did you try to open this up or something?" I've for as long as I remember, I've been interested in science. And then I wanted to do astronomy. That's what I really wanted to do.
Okay.
I attended many, in high school, I attended many courses at the planetarium in astronomy. And this was 1986.
Okay.
Halley's Comet was around. Another uncle, a relative, not directly, was the director of the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. And they have a 2-meter telescope somewhere. And he used to come back with these phenomenal images. And, I used to go, wow, never seen something like this. These were before the days of NASA pictures being available everywhere or something. So I was interested in astronomy, and of course, looking at I had a little 4-inch telescope and looking at the moons of Jupiter and rings of Saturn and all that stuff. And then after I, got into IIT, I realized that professional astronomers actually, they don't even know for them, whatever they're looking at as some RA deck, it's a number. They have no idea where it is in the sky. I'm a guy who likes to work with my hands to grind mirrors and make things and, things like this. I'm not a guy who's just going to sit and do math. So it was getting too, astrophysics, astronomy was too mathematical, and I had now signed up for physics, but it was engineering physics, and I liked the engineering aspect much more. So, eventually I got into materials and semiconductors, and because there you could work in a lab and do some experiments and do something like that. So that's how I landed up in sort of becoming a professional scientist. Now, right from, I would say, my college days, a bunch of us were always keen that we should be able to tell the wider world what we do and why we do, because it's basically public money. And we used to go hiking in the local, about 50 kilometers out of here, the hills start, and where the plateau starts, there's a bunch of hills. And many places we would, be going to villages and all, and it was quite surprising that we were from the best IIT, the best technology institute in the country, learning, the top-notch things in electrical engineering or physics or whatever it was. But when it came to practical problems like, the guy doesn't have the neutral wire on his pole or something, we didn't have a solution. So that sort of was pretty, it told me that we had an obligation to actually convey what we are doing to the larger public. And when I went, I was very lucky. I got to the US for grad school. I got a scholarship to go to Wisconsin-Madison. And there was a materials research, MRSEC, Materials Research Society for Education and something. And they used to get kids to the lab to do simple experiments. Of course, a lot of it was basically ticking the boxes. They were trying to make sure that they ticked various boxes so they could continue with their funding or whatever else. But still, it was fun to see how people could take sort of experiments you didn't think would be amenable for kids to do, but get them interested in it. And that was interesting. And then after I finished off from there and went to Germany as a postdoc in Berlin, that's a science city. That's really a place where they have the long night of science, where all the institutions and things are open across the night, and there are, the public transport system networks with them to ensure that people can go from A to B and whatever else. And they'll have a loop that 11 o'clock at night you can do this over here, and midnight this is going to happen, and 1 o'clock in the morning this is open. So they used to have these things. In the evening there will be programs for kids, and those were fantastic. I mean, the amount of preparation that went into organizing a city-wide science festival. And of course, I think there were a lot more school groups coming in, a lot more, sort of the bring your kid to work day, but in an informal manner. In Berlin. And when I came back here, I was kind of lucky, I would say. I mean, TFR probably didn't encourage us to do outreach, but it never stopped us. So those of us who were interested in going and talking to schools and things like this, we did it. And thankfully, the group I joined, the guy who used to be the head of the department, the senior guy, he himself was very much of a probably much more than me. Would go to there's a slum colony right outside here. Go there and teach kids and teach adults, and he ran a library there. So he was much more in touch with the larger community. And he also encouraged me to sort of get out of the lab and do things. And he would if I needed to take something from the lab, he would never say no. I mean, he'd say, just go ahead and do it. Okay. So that way I got interested in it. Luckily, the British Council sent me to Edinburgh for a formal science communication training. That's where I also learned some of the sort of interesting do's and don'ts, which helped me scale things up when I came back.
And when was that?
That was, 2008 perhaps. Okay. That's before, or 2007 or 8, because that's before the start of Chai and Wai, because I got the idea for a science cafe over there. I realized exactly why their science cafes weren't working out in India, and I realized what we should do, and I took a risk in doing it, and it seems to have worked.
So you had several different inspirations between your own interest in science and then how.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think
to communicate it.
Right, and I think the other thing is, see, much of the science in India is funded by the government, right? It's public funding. However, scientists are seen like some weird creatures who live in ivory towers and don't talk to anybody, and that's not really the truth. I mean, there are scientists also who are brilliant dancers and musicians and everything else. I mean, they're very creative guys, and I think we owe it to the public to tell them what we do in science. And most of the institutions have a public relations office, but that's more of a top-down, communication of the information deficit model, that we know stuff that you don't, and this is good for you, but accept it. That kind of a model. That is one, and there is a lot of, even in a city like Mumbai, which is actually not known for science, it's mostly a finance and commerce kind of a hub. There are people who would like to know about science, who would like to meet a scientist, but there's no platform for doing that. So having a place where you can get authentic information about science, meet scientists, ask them questions, etc., is I think was something that was needed. I mean, it was a gap that we would get into.
Okay, so since we've jumped to your long-term interest in science communication and education, why don't you explain a little bit more about how Chai and Why came about, and then perhaps go into the pandemic as well, because you were explaining to me some very interesting and important interventions that came about because of your experience working between science and between communicating with the public.
So let's do the Chai and Why story first. So this is Chai and Why is a science cafe, but it's a very different science cafe, right? So the overall aim of a science cafe is where you have an informal, you get a scientist who knows something about a topic, they give the big picture, and then there's informal question answers over, it could be a glass of beer if you're in Germany, but it could be a cup of chai if you're in India, whatever it is. Or a cup of coffee if you're in somewhere, I don't know. So this is the traditional model, and that's how we sort of what I had envisaged initially as well. Now, in general, if you look at a typical café scientifique or a science cafe in Europe, the ones I've attended, they are mostly attended by adults. They are looking at a range of topics, no problem, and they are held in a public place, in a cafe or something. So I first went around to the coffee shops and and nobody was interested. Luckily, Prithvi Theatre, which is one of the best known theatres in India, they wanted to get a play on mathematics. It was a play on Ramanujan. They wanted to get it to Mumbai, and they were scouting for a big enough auditorium. And the person who used to run it, Sanjana Kapoor, she came to TIFR to check out if our auditorium could be used. Unfortunately, our auditorium was being renovated at that time. All the chairs had been stripped off because new chairs were coming in and things like this. So that couldn't happen. But we got chatting about this whole thing, and she seemed to like this idea, and she said, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you try it? So one thing I knew is that science is itself a word that people are scared about. It's this unfortunate subject that you have to study in school, and the moment you're done with the semester, you forget it and you move on with life. Right. So it shouldn't have science in the title. The other thing is, I did not want to host it in TIFR because, if you're anyway going to be apprehensive and scared of science, why would you want to come to a scientist? It's like the lion inviting you to the den to have a chat, which is not going to happen. So a neutral venue like a theatre, and they have a very fantastic publicity mechanism, so they would reach out to people. And right in Edinburgh, when we had these sessions on science cafes, his name Chai and Why had come to me at that time, because in India, calling somebody for a cup of chai is the most natural sort of icebreaker that you have, and we have these rhyming terms, chai why, the Y doesn't, not a WHYY, but just chai why. Just a nonsense rhyming word that goes with it. And this could easily be moved to Chai and Why, the WHY that we would provide. And the name sort of, Sanjana thought it was interesting, and I said, okay, let's do 6 sessions, because, well, I know I can do one, and I know I have a couple of friends who will do them, so I can guarantee that we'll do 6 sessions. And I think it was very popular, and within the first couple of months, people said, why is it once a month? Let's make it twice a month. So then I approached local college where I was there, and they said, can we use your venue? And they were okay with it. So we went to twice a month, and it's been 18 years and we're going on. So it seems to have, attendance varies, but then we also did things which other people do not do in a science cafe. We don't enforce age limits, because if I want somebody to come, but they don't have access to childcare or whatever else, what do they do? So I'm like, as long as a kid is not going to be crying and making something, feel free to bring, it's okay to have kids around the place. That's okay, we don't mind. And even we often have 5th standard or 4th standard children out there who often ask some very insightful questions because they are not, they're not afraid to ask questions, let's put it that way. So that's worked out well. And we also ensure that the session which is nearest to the festival of Holi, which is the festival of color, has something to do with color. And the session which is nearest to the festival of Diwali, which is another big festival in India, has something to do with light. So these two sessions are the only sessions for which the topic is sort of decided, but it's also a festival specific one. Then the 4 sessions which are in the 2 months where there is a summer break for school in Mumbai, those 4 sessions normally we sort of say that these are meant for, let's say, high school and beyond, but we don't stop anybody from coming.
Sure.
But the ones which are in our summer special sessions, those 4, they are actually all hands-on experiment sessions, which we will ensure that even a 7-year-old will get something out of it. That's the aim. So because the main problem I see as I interacted with schools more after coming here is that the education is very, very theoretical. It's very bookish, and even if there are experiments in the book, the kids have not got a chance to do it. So often to do something simple with your own hands is a great thing. And while it is meant for younger kids, we have kids of all ages because their parents also have never done those experiments, so they are equally good. So, and especially if it's experiments with things at home, experiments with chocolate, experiments with things which are available at home, everybody is eager to do it. Experiments with music, experiments with trying to tie up strings and tie knots or whatever else. I mean, they don't realize that they're doing actually something which is mathematics or something else, but then it's a fun way to do it. And these can be done open air, can be done in any. So the 4 sessions in the summer are unique to Chai, the Diwali and Holi specials. And in the month of November, when the Nobel Prizes are, just before the Nobel Prizes are awarded, they're announced, after they're announced and between they're awarded, we have sessions where our students, TIFR students, present the work that has been done for that year's Nobel Prize. So we sort of go into a little bit of the background of the Nobel Prize.
And who is that targeted at?
Again, public at large. Yeah. So it's not for... and we do... I mean, my job is... I don't do all the sessions. I curate them. Of course, if there is nobody, I will do a session. I've done probably more than 25 of them because the show must go on. And I am sure that I have lots of sessions that I can talk about, lots of things that I can talk about, mostly general observations. So I've done things ranging from the chem history of light, how we made light from early days of fire to the most modern LEDs. I've done stuff like science from a Mumbai local train, stuff that you see from the train, the shape of the wires hanging and the sound of the train and whatever else. I've done sessions on how the wheel was invented and how the wheel has changed our lives and various things. So
sort of broad, wide-ranging topics. That's
the history of the Nobel Prizes, the Physics Nobel Prize, or Galileo's. The latest one I did was on Galileo's sort of everybody knows Galileo through some balls or through some feathers or something else. The work he's done on gravitation, and the Galileo looked through the telescope and found something. But Galileo did lots of other things. He worked on thermometry. He worked on so many things that people are not aware of. So I did the other Galileo, all of the other things that Galileo had done. I will do a session to fill in if necessary. But usually I am the copywriter who encourages people. So people come and say, nobody's going to understand what I say, what I do. I say, no, don't worry. Let's see, what do you do? I'll sit with people and say, okay, no, this part that you do is actually going to be very interesting for people. You just have to package it correctly. So now, and you have to give a catchy title. Right? So you need the hook to bring people in. After that, you can tell them the science. But if they don't come, then they will not something. So, which means that you have to be a bit creative in your titles, and that's something which I think I've been. I sit with people and try and do this. So. And often they are puns that involve something, a reference to a viral song or a reference to something which is culturally people would relate to. Things like this, which then people will make them smile, but hopefully it will make them also come for the session, and then you can, or a link to a very popular song. And sometimes you've got to take liberties. I've had fights with people say, no, that's not correct. I mean, There was one thing which was on gamma ray bursts, and there was a song which is similar, but that's about stars. And the presenter was very adamant, saying that no, this can't happen on a star; it has to be something else. I said that's fine. You can start off by telling people, look, I've fooled you a bit. The title was not very scientifically accurate, but now that you're here, let me tell you about it. That's a way to. But at least you've got them in; otherwise, you wouldn't come.
Sure.
So you could have talked about the development of the embryo or something. Whereas there was a very popular song which was called Ande Ka Fanda, which is the story of the egg or something like that, which is a viral song. And if you just give that as a topic, people might come. Then you tell them what you're really going to tell them. But otherwise, nobody's going to wake up on a Sunday morning to come and listen to a talk on whatever the fundamentals of wireless communication. You have to sell it properly.
Of course, I attended one of these sessions, and it was on quantum entanglement, correct? So.
Right. That was one of the more esoteric ones, I would say.
No, but interesting. A good thing to introduce people to. What was the hook with that one?
What was it? I think connected but separated or something like that.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, these days I have not been able to put in as much effort into designing catchy titles as earlier. I've sort of divided my life in different places, and it's been
the
difficult.
Next generation of catchy title builders.
Yeah, we've got to hand it over to other people.
Okay, so let's go into the next topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
You explained it to me previously. This way you got involved with the pandemic here in India, and it felt like it combined these two.
So yeah, I don't know how it happened. It was sort of the most exciting time in my life, actually. I've never worked so hard before. I had anticipated that this is not looking good. I had anticipated that there's going to be a problem. The world was not, whatever people projecting that, yeah, fine, this is going to go away. It's not going to be that easy. And I took a risk of shutting my lab down. That allowed me to sort of gracefully turn things, sort of phase things out and turn things off slowly rather than suddenly be forced to shut down. So we had, tapered off the activities in the lab, and sure enough, the lockdown came. And given that my lab requires a continuous supply of hydrogen and nitrogen, and they had diverted every cylinder available to oxygen service, I knew that we're not going to get hydrogen and nitrogen. So that was a good decision, because for a long time we didn't get any hydrogen in the lab. So anyway, that was, I didn't have any plans as such, but then one fine day I got a call from the local hospital here, one of the big ones, saying that we don't have much of a stock of masks left. Can you help us come up with some way of reusing the masks? And since I wasn't doing anything else, I don't know why I said yes to it. I said yes, fine, okay, we'll figure it out. Now, I didn't know anything about this. So I figured out that, look, the people who work on the virus, they know very well how to zap the bug, right? However, whatever you use, whether it's some radiation or it's some liquid you dip it in or some whatever process it is, it should not damage the filtration ability of the mask. That's the main thing. Now, checking the filtration ability is a physics problem, and that's what we design. The system I work on, I grow semiconductor materials. We have tons of flow sensors and this and that. If I cannot do that, what am I doing? So we, with a couple of friends, we rigged up a setup where we could measure the filtration efficiency of a mask. And this is based on two things. One is inputs from, I figured out who's doing what. I found out there was a group called the N95 Decon Consortium in the US. And I just sent them a cold email saying that, look, I'm in India, I'm going to try this. They said, yeah, we have calls every day at this time. Why don't you just join into that's the first time I heard of Zoom, actually. Hop onto the call. And then it seemed that people in California were dealing with a lot of fires, forest fires that were happening. And there were a lot of these cheap sensors that they knew which were measuring air quality. And they said you should be able to pick up one of these sensors. They can measure particle counts even though they don't use it. They can measure particle counts at the size that is necessary for testing a mask. Okay. So I said, good. How do I find this chip now? It's locked down. So I go to the net and I start searching for who are the guys who sell this. So I start calling them one by one. And no, we are closed. No, we can't do anything. The sixth guy I call is like, oh, are you Arnab from Chai and Why? Yeah, I've attended one of your sessions. What do you want? I said, look, I'm trying to do this. I said, yeah, we use these. We make air pollution monitoring equipment. We use these, but I can't give you one because there's a lockdown and our factory is shut, and we have some devices in the factory, but it's in the factory. I said, look, that's my problem. So thankfully, we are part of a government lab, Department of Atomic Energy. I got a sort of a curfew pass made so that our vehicle could get out even though there was a lockdown. Sent a vehicle to his house, dragged him out of his house, took him to his factory, got him to open the factory, got him to get those devices in the car, drove him all the way here. And in those days, most of the world was shut down. And we were very lucky that because TIFR had some special deals, there were still packets of biscuits and all available. And he was quite amazed to see that our canteen still had chai and biscuits and all. And I said, just pick up as many packets as you want. Take them with you, no problem. Pick one of each, no problem. And so he helped us, he brought us these little, they are Chinese chips that they were making, and we used that and we set up a system, we made it, and then I was talking with these N95 decon guys every day. We figured how we would do it, wet heat. Did some, experiments. The hospital had, of course, sent me masks. Their doctors had permission to travel, so...
These were for first responders?
First responders, yeah, for the healthcare workers. And... they sent me masks. We put sensors on the mask. We tested it out. Then we scaled it up and set it up in the hospital. And it was used by almost 1,000 people in the first, 1,500 people in the first wave. We decontaminated almost 10,000 masks when there were no masks around. And unfortunately, we never wrote it up and published it and all this stuff because at that time I was more bothered about getting it done. But I thought it was the first time I'd actually done something useful in life because I grow materials which may not ever find use. I just study their properties, I publish papers, but who knows, maybe 20 years later someone might use them, but there's no immediate use. But here was something, you're doing something where you can see that it's being used. So that was a different kind of satisfaction in a way. But it also told me that from masks I was with these N95 decon guys, we got into, can we reuse gloves, medical gloves, can you reuse them? What limits the use of them? Because what really sort of, not upset me, but concerned, was what I found concerning, was the fact that, so you're a physicist. The way you filter stuff, right? If your particles are large, you can just sieve them. You can use a sieve and stop them. Now, if you want to filter smaller and smaller particles, you make your sieve smaller, the holes, the gaps. Now that of course will increase the resistance of your breathing. So I can take the glass and hold it on my nose. It's N100. Nothing goes through, but I'll suffocate, right? So the way the N95 works is they have fibers which are charged, which are electrically charged. So they attract these small particles, so they can manage with gaps that are large, but so that doesn't impede breathability, but it can still attract very fine particles. Now obviously because it is charged, if you wash it or you put alcohol on it or sanitizer on it or whatever, it will bleed the charge away and it won't be as effective. Right. Now the guys who invented these masks in the 1970s knew this very, very well. They also knew how you could reuse it. Okay. But unfortunately, the masks were designed for people in the mining industry or people painting a wall or scrubbing something, etc. If you reuse a mask, you don't sell it. Right? Sure. So it was an economic decision to tell people that these are single-use products to be thrown. And I think, given that these masks are basically made from polypropylene fibers, charged fibers of course, and the rest of it is also other polymers, I think even in times of plenty, I think one should reuse masks simply because otherwise you're creating a non-biodegradable landfill product.
That was a big issue during the pandemic too.
Right. Whereas if you can use a mask, even 5 times, you have reduced your landfill by a significant amount.
Sure. And
you can actually do it very, very simply. The easiest thing is to just keep them. If you could afford to buy 5 masks, then you use mask 1 on day 1, keep it aside, use mask 2 on day 2, and on day 6 you go back and use your first mask. The SARS-CoV-2 virus does not survive on any surface for more than 72 or so many hours, so you're pretty much safe to use that mask again. And in general, it's never the filtration medium that's the problem. Masks fail because either the straps give way or somebody has lipstick that's gone and contaminated something. It's not the problem of the filtration medium. or the nose clip breaks or something of that sort.
And these were the recommendations you were giving to the government, to the hospitals, to the public at large?
Yeah. So we were trying to tell people that this is what you can do, and I don't know if anybody listened to that, but the hospital was very, very happy, of course. And then and all the stuff we made, we were using wet heat, was with our institute has a biology section. They had discarded incubators, and we used to just take these discarded incubators. They are well insulated boxes, and just put a little heating element in it with a thermocouple to collect, to regulate the temperature, and just rejig it as so this is with some colleagues in the lab, rejig it as a hot box basically, which would be used for decontamination. And then we just gave them off to many hospitals and clinics and dispensaries, whoever wanted it. And then through N95 Decon, actually, I got involved in the second wave in trying to see if we could use UV light. Now, UV light is another very nice non-contact way of being able to zap the bug. Unfortunately, and my problem was, it was being hyped and sold in, hugely advertised. There would be UV boxes where you can go and keep your keys and your files and whatever else. The problem that people don't realize is that if you buy an 11 watt UV lamp, which is just a fluorescent tube without the white phosphor coating, the UV power is only 4 watts. It's not 11 watts. And also, if you have an 11 watt lamp, you don't have 11 watts where you've kept your stuff. There is the inverse square law. You can't do anything about it. So most of these boxes you need, the studies are very clear in the literature, you need 1 joule per square centimeter to get any decontamination. Now, most of these boxes, unless you kept it for 5 hours, you would not get the required dose. So putting it in for 30 seconds is nothing. Right? Now, if you really want to do something in a minute, you need a much higher UV intensity. And people, people like shiny stuff. But a nice stainless steel box, looking like a microwave basically, but with some UV lights, looks very nice. But stainless steel is a very poor reflector in the UV. So, honestly, if you had crumpled aluminum foil, that's probably much better than having stainless steel. So we had these very basic studies that we were doing on trying to see what is the best way to make a UV box. And this with some, some people in Peru, in Africa, in something. So it was really a nice global bunch of people working together who would have, I have never met most of the people I've collaborated with. Right? I don't think I'll ever meet them. But thanks to this tiny virus, we used to at least talk on Zoom twice a week or whatever it was. And then in the end of the second wave, hospitals out here started getting overwhelmed with cases. And much of it was because everybody needed oxygen. And we figured that the problem is actually that the guys who really require hospitalization are not getting it. And people who are coming to the hospital probably don't need hospitalization. There are very simple things you can do at home. Just sleep on your tummy is one of them. And we needed a one-pager to tell people how do you take care of, and what are the things to look for, and what are the over-the-counter medication you can take, what are the simple steps to do, and the fact that you do not need some of these very, very expensive therapies that are available. And we had a fact sheet that was generated by some of the doctors we were working with, and I was coordinating translating it, and we translated it into about 31 different languages. And because we had to not only get it translated, we had to get it vetted by people who are native language speakers to make sure it's understandable. And it was fun coordinating that. And again, this was there was something called the India COVID SOS. Some bunch of people who had, again, it was completely informal. And I think these informal network worked very well. Again, I don't know half the people who are involved, except some from there were some TFR colleagues of mine who had also, I knew them, of course. But then we were debunking, with another bunch of people, we were debunking all kinds of, false things that were coming out that about vaccines and about...
Here in India.
Here in India, yeah.
Generally, how receptive are people in India to science or scientific evidence, or how susceptible are they to misinformation, as you're talking about?
Very, very. Thanks to WhatsApp and things like this, you have echo chambers, and people are, the problem is that though India is probably the only or one of the very, very few countries where the constitution says that citizens are mandated to develop a sense of scientific temper, I don't think that it's very prevalent in India anymore. I mean, I remember that, what was it? Very early on in the first wave of the pandemic itself, the government of all the people encouraged people to come out at some time, some decided time, and take plates and bang them, and also the sound, the vibrations would make the virus go away, some total junk, right? Then they had something like at 9 o'clock they would turn the lights out for 9 minutes, right? All it did was reduce inductive load suddenly and force the power factor to go haywire. Right? I remember coming to TIFR where they had arranged lots of heating coils, etc., to take up the load when the people switched off all their lights and fans and things like this. So, I mean, there were lots of very, very crazy things being passed around, and
all over the world, for sure.
All over the world. I mean, I don't think India did anything very dramatically different, but this also got me interested at the interface of science education and public health, and science popularization, communication, whatever. And to the extent that just about in the middle of the pandemic in July 2021, I was asked to take over the directorship of the Homi Bhabha Centre for Science Education, and the first project I did there was actually one on vaccine hesitancy and looking at what school students or high school students understand about COVID vaccination, because India has a very robust immunization program, but that's entirely pediatric. It's only for infants and people under 5. And here's the first time that 15-year-olds and above were being given a poke, given a shot. And I mean, what do they understand about it? And there are lots of the reasons for not taking vaccines are very, very different. I mean, out here, everybody is very happy to get a free vaccination that the government is giving you. No problem. People are eager to take it. Except if you're a daily laborer and if your family depends on you working today to bring money home to eat, and if the vaccine is going to give me fever for 2 days and I can't go to work for 2 days, I will think twice about taking the vaccine. That's one category. The other category are people who are sort of die-hard believers in, I will drink ginger and pepper, boil them and drink them, and I'll not get any COVID. I mean, that's it might be very good. It might give you immunity against a common cold or something, but this is a new virus that you've not seen before, and you do not have the immunity for it. Right. So, or there were all kinds of fancy things that this vaccine is going to make you important and this and that. A lot of stories going around. And
so you got involved with HBCSE.
Yeah. So I had I had a PhD student who worked on this, and she's just submitted her thesis actually. So, but it's been quite an interesting journey, because I think one thing, the pandemic also changed the way we do science outreach, because earlier all our programs were essentially in-person programs, but now of course Chai and I could not stop, so we figured out how to use Zoom and things and go online and whatever. We didn't know what people were, so we used to tell them that tomorrow's session, we know you're at home, please have a glass of water and a paper and a pen and these things ready, we're going to do some experiments. So we did just a sheet of water, just a sheet of paper, just a glass of water, just a box of matches, just a piece of string. We did very simple experiments and encouraged people to follow on and do it with us. And then we learned that it's actually, earlier, if you had to get your session recorded, you'd have to call somebody with a camera and they would come and record it, etc. Now it was very simple. A mobile phone could do the recording. And you could then just export your Zoom call to YouTube, and it would be archived on YouTube forever. You don't have to do post-processing of your video and something. So it helped us a lot. And so now what happened after that is, even our regular sessions, at least the first part when whoever is speaking gives a big picture of the thing, before the question answer time we actually live stream it. Because we know how to do it. It's pretty easy without being intrusive. You can just have a little webcam somewhere picking it up. So that in a way that was useful.
You've been adapting,
right? And personally, I mean, I think the thing I'm happiest about is I hate going to Delhi for meetings, right? And earlier you had to, there was no excuse. Now you can ask, can I attend it online, right? I mean, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, catching a 6 o'clock flight, going there in time for the meeting, coming back in the evening, it's possible, but it just knocks you out for the next day.
Sure.
And usually the useful time in these meetings is half an hour or 1 hour,
sure.
right? Which I'd rather just attend online and finish it off. So
has its pros for sure.
Yeah, certainly has its pros. Yes.
So let's.
Though I must admit that there is a whole bunch of people whom I deeply respect. I have great admiration for their work, who to me are just 2D images I have seen on Zoom because I've never ever met them, right, across the world. So someday I'll meet them. I don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know. Hopefully,
establish the connection, but it'll go farther.
Right.
So there's so many things I've learned about what you do at HBCSE, and you're also responsible for textbooks that go to hundreds of millions of students. So I think it's better I just ask you, what would you like to highlight about the institute that you're the director for now? You said you joined it in the middle of the pandemic, but that's still your charge, and presumably what you'll be doing for the foreseeable future. So what are some of the programs and mission that you'd like to highlight from the center?
The Homi Bhabha Centre for Science Education it's a pretty unique institution in India. I mean, I don't think there's any parallel of this. So we are dedicated, we are the National Center for STEM Education, and we have two things that drive us. One is efforts in equity, the other is excellence. And both these are not necessarily disjoint sets. I mean, there are overlaps as well. So it started off as being something looking at by a group in TIFR who are looking at why do students who learn in Marathi, the local language, why do they have trouble learning science subjects? And from that, so interventions in rural areas and small schools and underserved things, came the equity angle which was there, and a lot of interventions in school education. Eventually the government asked us to be in charge of the Olympiad program, the science and mathematical Olympiads in the country, and that is then looking at high achievers and high performers who will go on to represent India at the international level. So that's the excellence angle. And then we have other large programs also, the National Initiative in Undergraduate Science, where we are trying to make undergraduate science, the level varies a lot across the countries. You have institutions like the IITs and the ICERs, which are very, very good. And then you have the run-of-the-mill colleges across the country who are deeply starved for resources and don't have much. So how do you get kids from all these places on some level playing field so that they can then figure out what to do?
Right.
Then we have Vigyan Pratibha, which is a very large program aimed at reimagining science teaching for grade 8, 9, 10, so high school.
This is the interdisciplinary program.
And this is very interdisciplinary. We don't want to look at it in terms of physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, but in terms of little learning units where activities can be done, where you can sort of integrate things from across the field. We also run Vigyan Vidushi, which is for women MSc physics students, just to get more women, keep them don't have the leaky pipeline, as they say. Hopefully encourage them to go on with a PhD or go on with whatever they want to do, remain in science. And we have, all this is based on the fact that we do research in STEM education. So looking at how do kids learn, what are the problems they face, what are the kind of concept inventories that you can use to check their learning, a lot of different things. I mean, some of them looking at, so for example, one of my students was working on the, what do high school students know about vaccines and knowledge about vaccines, vaccine hesitancy, etc. Another one, PhD student looking at what do high school students around in Mumbai know about this. Another one is trying to repeat something similar for climate change, because that's another term that's been around and people are trying to get into it, but do students really understand what is climate change? And then we are starting with a new student who may be working on the next big thing, which is AI. So the government has introduced AI as a subject in grade 9, but do the teachers even know what is AI? Right, and what are they teaching? Because otherwise you don't know. I mean, the first step is knowing what is there. So these are, early forays into these areas.
How do you see AI impacting science education in India?
I think it's going to be dramatic because, yes, there is always a danger that, you have the doom scrollers or the doomsayers saying that, this is terrible, people will not learn anything, they're going to cheat, they're going to do this. On the other hand, given that in India we sort of have leapfrogged over many of the technology steps that happen. For example, in mobile communications, we sort of directly went to a much more reliable technology for data and whatever else. So you have, I've traveled around the world, and I think getting 5G internet is probably much easier in India than in other places. Similarly, I think AI has the potential to sort of be a support for education. It's not a replacement, because the way I would look at it is like it's a map of the world where everything is mapped, every little thing is mapped, and it is excellent if you want to just ask it that I want to go from here to here, how do I go, right? It's excellent for saying, okay, where do you think in this I can find something? But will it discover new continents? Will it discover things that have not been asked, right? So I think the ability to question, the ability to ask interesting questions is what it doesn't have. And see,
the more critical
thinking aspect. It can help a farmer give me statistics of the last 50 years, tell me the rainfall and the temperature and something that has happened in the first week of April for the last 50 years, right? And suggest what I should plant. But once that thing is planted, there has to be some work done by the farmer. That the AI can't do.
He has to have more of an understanding, a deeper
understanding. So it can help. You can ask the AI, okay, look, I have this crop now. Where should I take it to so I can get a good price? Right? Might be able to answer that. On the other hand, there are definitely, the kids who are in school today, the world they will enter, once they are entering the market force or whatever you call it, the workforce, they are going to be entering a world dominated by AI. So we might as well teach them how to use it and how to make the best use of it, and how to use it to help them in their journeys to ask interesting questions and to do things. So I would think that it's not something that we should, you can't ban anything because it'll just make people use it under the table, or they'll figure out some way of using it. That's not the solution. On the other hand, clearly the current generation, I'm talking about generative AI, okay, in particular, large language models and whatever else. They do have their quirks, they do have their limitations of training. And what I will say is that I am sure that you're going to see in the next decade models being developed locally, which have far more local content than. So I realized this when we were doing this, as you said, one of the hats I wear is this National Textbook Committee thing for the science textbooks. So, of course, the authors are people in good institutions and the National Centre for Education Research and Training, NCERT, who have access to all the tools in the world. And sometimes they will say, okay, let me use AI to get a picture, get an idea for a picture, and I'll use it. And given that the current generation of these LLMs, and whether it is Nano Banana or whatever, Gemini or whatever you're using, ChatGPT or something, are all trained on data from the West effectively. When you ask it to generate a scene or daytime and a nighttime scene of animals in a forest, it shows a bald eagle because that's probably the most item which is found in their training data, and which is not in an Indian animal at all, right? So you have to be very careful. On the other hand, if you had a AI which was trained on Indian data, it may have generated actually species which are local to India, which would make sense. So I think there is a long way to go, and there is a wealth of information, of books, of knowledge in languages other than English.
Definitely.
And I think that's what makes it actually much more fun. And I'd like to see an AI come up with, so Google can translate into 200 and whatever odd languages, etc. But that's a very limited. That's not really generative AI as such. So
it does have a place in future models.
Right, as long as we don't get wiped out by them, yes, I think so.
I feel something we've skipped over quite a bit here, and I aim to speak to you about, and we've had some very lively conversation, is more your research in science, your lab. Can you explain a bit more
my research? Yeah, of course. So, and in fact, I'll be very honest. I mean, I came back to India mainly for doing science. I was asked to come back. I was invited to come back. So I work in the area of semiconductors. Now, most of the semiconductor world, all the electronics, the TVs, radios, iPad, whatever, everything is based on silicon. But silicon has a tiny little problem that it doesn't emit light. It can absorb light, you can make a solar cell out of it, but it doesn't emit light. So if you want to make materials that emit light, you have to work on what are called compound semiconductors. These are artificial materials that you synthesize. You can synthesize materials which have very similar crystal structure to silicon, but by taking, say, gallium and arsenic or gallium and nitrogen or something, you can make compounds. And the beauty of it is not that you can just take, you have 5 elements on this side and 5. It's not that you choose one from here, one from here. You can make mixtures. So you can take gallium arsenide, which will emit some color of light, and I can replace some of the gallium atoms with indium atoms or with aluminum atoms and push the wavelength one way or the other. I can replace some of the arsenic with phosphorus and shift the wavelength. So I can make compounds, and every compound has a distinct color of light that it emits or absorbs. And I can make indium, gallium arsenide, phosphide, aluminum, gallium, indium nitride. I can make whatever combination you want. And over the last 30 or 40 years, we've developed the technology that we can synthesize these materials with atomic level precision. I can deposit a layer of gallium atoms, a layer of nitrogen atoms, a layer of gallium atoms. I can do this, and hence I can make sort of designer materials with certain properties. And all the LED lights that we use are basically gallium nitride based materials, which are emitting UV light or blue light, and it's converted with a phosphor to make it white light.
The future of lighting is
your sense? I mean, it's not the future; it's the present. It's the current generation of lighting is going to be this. Well, there is still a lot more we can do for efficiency and make it even better, etc. But still, I would say the light emitting diode, the LED, is currently way more efficient than fluorescent tubes and incandescent lamps and whatever else. So my research, of course, is not to, and this is one aspect, the light emitting thing, but these are also very good for high frequency transistors. Transistors that are used, your mobile phone charger earlier had a transformer and was pretty heavy. Now it's one chip, which is a gallium nitride chip, which is doing the same job. So wherever power conversion is involved, so whether it's a mobile phone charger or an electric vehicle or something else, you need these compound semiconductor devices. And my job was to come back and set up the first lab in India to grow these single crystal layers of gallium nitride and related materials. After that, we did gallium nitride in different forms, nanowires. We worked on different materials like tungsten sulfide, molybdenum selenide, rhenium selenide, whatever, a huge range of zoo of materials that you can make. The last material we've been having fun with is gallium oxide, which is also a semiconductor which can rival this gallium nitride, and it also is electrically conductive and can be grown easily, etc. So there's a lot of interest in that right now. So I don't work on making the world's best lasers or something. I'm trying to grow new materials, try and understand their basic properties, see whether we can understand. So the gallium nitride LED, for example, which is so bright and so all the camera flash and everything else is this. We still do not really understand why it emits light. From what we know of basic physics, the number of defects it has, it should not work. It should die, but it still works. Right? So, and there are other wavelength windows. I mean, so far we've looked at the visible, but there are lots of applications. If you can push it to the UV, you can use it for water treatment, water disinfection. If you push it to the infrared, there are other uses of it. So, designing materials, semiconductor materials, which you can incorporate into devices which will at different wavelengths, which can have, can do different things. The first step is in being able to grow the material. That's where I come in. That's the work I do. And it's been a challenge because unfortunately everything you need to do such work isn't made in India. So you've got to get it from outside. And then you're at the mercy of countries either allowing you to export it or not export it, or ships allowing you to bring it or not, because most of the stuff will not come by air, it has to come by sea, and then it might sit on a ship, for all you know, sitting in the Hormuz Strait somewhere, I don't know where it is. So I mean, you have to live with
and these are the basic materials for your
and
research.
These are the materials, basic materials.
We've spoken and scaling it up. What is the potential for some of this for India to build a domestic industry of semiconductors and solar?
Well, India's been
cells?
trying very hard for the last. Clearly, I mean, if you look at it in terms of a market, it's huge, because you have the standard graph that people will show you of the amount of energy you consume versus your per capita income and your development index or whatever it is. So the development index is clearly linked to the amount of energy you can consume. And the amount of energy is, of course, you have to generate that energy. So whether you generate it using coal, oil, solar, nuclear, whatever it is, you have to generate that energy somehow. And then there's data from the last 300 years about light, right? One of the primary drivers of economic development is light. If there is light, it does historically light has done two things. It enables you to, of course, in the good old days, work beyond the hours of daylight. You could work at night. It gave you safety from animals and everything else. But today it's not that. Today, if you look at this room, for example, right? Look at any of our current modern day residences that we have. Even in the daytime, we need to use artificial light to be able to use those spaces. So to use the indoor spaces, you need light, right? If I have in a village, if there is light, kids can study. They go to school. If there is no light, they cannot study. Right? If you look at a map of India and look at the districts where you have social problems, Naxalism, whatever it is, and you correlate that with energy use per district, or you correlate a map of India at night where you can see leaking light. You can, the world at night. You have in some places there's too much light going out to the light going upstairs into the sky is not useful, right? But you can see that the places which are dark are the places where development is low. So you need light and you need energy. So, and right now the country is in a situation where you cannot, you need every watt you can generate, whether it's nuclear or coal or oil or whatever you're burning. You've got to get it. You need, because the consequences of not having that watt of power is much worse. Now, the question is, how much can we do in India? If you are thinking of semiconductors, the problem is that these are extremely capital heavy industries. So the reason that as of now there are only a handful of companies that make chips, Intel and AMD and something, and most of them get it fabricated in Taiwan somewhere, is because every generation of like Moore's law, which says that the number of transistors doubles on a chip every so often. There's another law which is a corollary which says the cost of making a fab doubles every so many years. So after a while, and you have only that much time in which you have to recover the investment that you've made. So most companies just go out of business, and it's not a commercially viable model. So I don't think there's much hope in doing that, given that we don't have the raw materials over here. So if you've got to import all your raw materials, you're not commercially competitive. And if you cannot do something which is commercially viable, it becomes very difficult to get support for that. There are of course enough niche areas where you might be successful, you might want to set up things, there are developments being made. And again, I think India is probably not going to be the leader in areas like silicon, very tough, but maybe new materials, silicon carbide, gallium oxide, etc. These are materials where I do see some startups coming up, I do see some activity happening, where people are still not 20 years behind everybody else or something, which are more modern and much more things coming up there. I think we have a far better chance. So I'm positive. I think when I came back and I was building my lab, there was pretty much nobody in the country who could even do orbital welding of stainless steel tubes. We had to teach people how to weld stainless steel tubes, short, small tubes. And it was very difficult to find somebody who had an orbital welder. We'd have to almost get it from outside or get somebody. And that's when we said we'll teach somebody. We did that. Now these guys, of course, have spread, and you can get a lot of stuff done. You can get ultra high vacuum equipment built locally. So the ecosystem is developing. It's not that it's not developing. It has a lot of things have changed. You can get pretty high tech stuff made here, semiconductor grade, semiconductor compatible. But again, doing it commercially is going to be a tough job.
And what about solar cells? Since we've spoken about that a bit as well, what's the potential for India building out their own solar cells, solar panel industry?
I'll answer that in two ways. One is, there is, remember that if you want solar cells, which are photovoltaics, which convert sunlight to electricity, you need silicon, right? To make silicon, you need a lot of electricity to convert sand to silicon. So this has generally been done in places where electricity was plenty, the fjords of Norway or wherever, where you had hydropower and things like this. Or you do it in a place where you can happily burn coal and get your electricity and you don't worry about it, like in China, right? You don't worry about any other consequences of it. Now, today, if I see the amount of power you would need to create these cells, maybe you can. It's possible. There are a few companies, the big conglomerates are all trying to get into the solar cell market, because if you can produce it locally, it's in a way, the transport costs, whatever else, are going to be much cheaper. And also, given that most of the solar panels in the world come from China, at least the cheaper ones, and people have sort of now begun to see that geopolitics can change any time, and you don't know what will happen. You probably want to have some level of independence in critical materials like solar cells. So that's one aspect of it. But I also think that I don't know how much you've roamed around in the last few days you were here. It's pretty hot outside, right? What we have neglected is solar thermal, right? Solar thermal is far less high tech. It is basic mechanical engineering for the most part. And in terms of, if I can trap the heat of the sun, whether it is to make hot water, because I will tell you, our colony out here, every flat, every day, we spend electricity to heat water to have a bath, right? If we could just use solar energy to heat the water and store it somehow, then you can store heat, you can insulate. You don't need, you don't need water at 90 degrees C, you need water at 45 degrees C, that's good enough, right? If we have had, it's probably not a very popular comment, but we've spent a lot of our scientific budget on pushing very high-tech things. The nuclear industry, the thorium-based nuclear power plant, which is good. It has a lot of spin-offs, and it's good. If we had put 100th of that money into promoting solar thermal, maybe in the last 50 years we would have made some advances in that, right? Because I think it's, if I look at the last 50 years, India has spent a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of institutes, a lot of people working in very difficult, very high risk, high reward areas, for example, nuclear power, right? And to try and develop, given that we don't have uranium, it's got to be a thorium based thing, to develop the thorium based 3-stage cycle, which on paper is fantastic if you could do it, because it's a process that you cannot use for weapons, etc., etc. So it's a very clean way of doing it, and we have lots of thorium sitting in the beaches of Kerala or wherever else.
And this was developed by Homi Bhabha, right?
By Bhabha. It was his idea to develop the thorium-based cycle, but it's not easy. It was 30 years away when I was in school. It's still 30 years away as far as I know.
Now the second step is what a fast breeder
is a fast breeder, yes.
Plutonium
Yes, which generates plutonium as an intermediate step. So now,
but it's interesting though.
It's a very interesting technology. But now we have spent, I don't know how many, millions, billions of dollars in it. Now, if we had, and that's because Bhabha used to define the science vision for the country. After that, we had somebody else who thought nanotechnology was the way to go. Somebody else thinks something is. So the result is that things which are perhaps simple mechanical engineering, solar thermal, etc., don't really get the amount of resources that would push them over the edge to become you could have become a leader in that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's possible to just use sunlight to melt something in the day and use the the latent heat that you've sort of used to melt it at night. The problem is the sun doesn't shine at night, but you can use that. And people have shown all these things in very small scale things. But now if you had to scale it up, I think it's a matter of sort of putting in resources to do it. And often in some of these areas, you cannot depend entirely on some entrepreneur to say that I'm going to put in my thing and solve it. You need to have some level of government support as well to either provide a framework for these innovations to happen or initially support things, etc. It's not zero, but it could have been, in my mind at least, a lot more.
Can it still be? Can India still be a leader in solar thermal, do you think?
Maybe.
With the proper communication.
Yeah, the thing is this, the sun isn't going away for the next few billion years or whatever, right? Yeah, so there's this time. We've got some time. And the energy crisis is going to get worse.
Yeah.
So I think people will figure out that instead of the sun just heating up things, let's try and see if we can use that heat.
I do want to pull on that thread a little bit more because we're talking in a very complex geopolitical time,
Oh yeah.
Energy crisis, especially in India with gas.
Oh yes.
And it seems like it's a time to push towards a more diverse energy matrix and, perhaps develop these kinds of technologies with more...
Oh, absolutely. I think my sort of hope or what I think is going to happen is, thanks to these sort of shocks that you get when you suddenly run out of natural gas or whatever else, which has to come from parts of the world where access currently is difficult, is that it will automatically spur more research and innovation in alternative areas, whether it is biomass being converted into some kind of a gas for using, retrofitting your standard thing, whether it is better utilization of wastes in, kitchens, etc., for whatever, whether it is in solar thermal or even simple things like reflective rooftop paints to minimize your air conditioning bill. I think these are all what I call potentially positive spin-offs of, because believe me, currently we've been, I think, well isolated from the realities of what is happening, because much of our fuel, much of the electricity is still generated by coal. Yes, there is a problem with cooking gas and something which is coming from Qatar or some other place. Our fields don't provide enough of natural gas that we can use. But once there is a knock-on effect, I think the prices of fuel are probably deliberately not being raised right now because the oil companies made a lot of they had a lot of buffer because they could buy cheap crude after COVID, and the prices didn't come down then, they remained about the same. But so over the years they can last out for a while before their things start getting hit. But also there are elections coming up in a few states, so I think the government is going to be very cautious about, the best way to win an election is to increase your fuel rates a week before that, so you don't want to do that. So I think they are smart, but I think I think in the long term it will spur developments into these things, and also it might change habits, which is probably much more of because it's so easy to get a gas cylinder, and it's people's disposable incomes have increased. People have given up soaking. When I was small, my parents used to soak things overnight and then cook them because it would take much less energy to cook it because you had to wait in a line to get your gas refill. Now it just comes home, you call somebody and you order it online on your phone and it comes, right? So people have got used to it, and then people have become lazy in terms of trying to take some extra effort to minimize their energy consumption.
Sure.
So if it does that, fine. I mean, I think it's a good thing.
Positive consequence. And just to go back, and it's a personal interest as well, I talk to a lot of people about this. As your parent institution is the Department of Atomic Energy, speaking of these more high-tech solutions, the three-step process for a domestic nuclear energy sector, or even importing nuclear energy from the outside, other technologies, where do you see the state of that development here at this stage?
So I would say that I think much of the policy that I see right now is guided by the principle that we need energy, right? So now, and we can't wait for 30 years. So yes, you need to get your thorium process going, but given that we can't wait till you guys figure out how to do it, let's try and decentralize this whole thing. Instead of just the Department of Atomic Energy being the only people who are allowed to play with nuclear energy, which is what it is currently, I think we're going to see a lot more. It's already happening with the Shanti bill and whatever else, that they're going to make much smaller reactors where the safety things are not that terribly difficult to handle. Which are like reactors which are used in aircraft carriers and submarines and whatever else, few megawatt or even smaller reactors, which then replace, today a lot of industry across India has captive power plants which are burning diesel or something, because they cannot depend, you don't have 100% grid reliability. So you will have your own backup generator. Instead of doing it in diesel, do it in nuclear. So that way the 100 gigawatts that I'm supposed to generate with nuclear, I can split that and use these small reactors in a distributed way across the country to be generating maybe about half of it, so that the amount of energy that the Department of Energy needs to produce through its nuclear power corporation. And I mean, the Department of Atomic Energy is not, the reactors are all run by a company, the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. Right, there is some research reactors run by the Department of Energy, but then finally the power production is a company that does it. So they would then try and focus on maybe trying to get the technology to the few hundred megawatt levels where it is makes sense to get a plant. Now, as of now, there's only one fast breeder test reactor somewhere near Chennai, and the most of the technology is good old pressurized heavy water reactors.
The first stage.
The first stage, yes. And with either designs that are, the designs of Westinghouse or Areva or the Russians, they're all variants of the same theme. So it's about the same thing.
And there's no test reactor for molten salt or something that uses thorium? Not yet?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I think they did try in a very small reactor, but I'm not sure about what the thing is. I don't know. It's not my... Yes, we are under the Department of Atomic Energy, but then we don't do anything related to that. So, and my research is not related to that, so I don't really follow the field very much.
Just a curiosity, because it's hard to know what's actually going on, but is that going to be part of India's future energy mix?
I think it has to be, because clearly if you want to use local resources of thorium that you have, and you have plentiful amounts of thorium, you might as well figure out a way to do it. And the thorium to U-233 seems like a very nice cycle that you can do.
Yeah, it really does in theory. That's why I want to understand. And, so when you talk about distributed, you're saying like a decentralized...
decentralized thing, right.
Version for smaller reactors, and that will fill the sort of mandate of nuclear
power.
Right,
there's supposed to be something called the small modular reactor that's going to be built and sort of the design handed out to whoever wants to do it.
Designed here in India or imported from the outside?
I think both options will be there.
Yeah. Right.
Because honestly, I mean, in terms of the nuclear reactor technology, I don't think our reactors are, the locally designed ones are any, they're all very good. I mean, the design of the fuel pins, the design of the heat transfer systems, the design of the reactor vessels. I mean, I think given that much of this was done during the era where there were technology denial regimes operating, which didn't allow you to do your, buy things from outside, it sort of forced people to develop it themselves, and I think there is enough local expertise in it.
It seems like there's quite a bit.
So that, I think, has sort of paid off in the long run. So it's good to be independent in a few things.
Yeah, clearly, and that's becoming even more clear now in the
Right.
current scenario. Well, to close this out, I mean, I know you have a lot of other interests.
No, it's okay. I mean, I can chat for some more time.
No, but you have other interests. We went to a classical music concert together.
Oh yeah.
We spoke about many different things. So I'll just kind of open it up. What are some of your other interests and concerns and ideas for the future? It's open-ended, whatever you want to say.
I don't know. I mean, so I was very surprised that I was even asked to lead the team of people writing the science textbooks for the next generation, and this is 200 million students, and my point is you cannot mess up science for 200 million people. You've got to get it right. And I think one of the things which sort of not worried me again, but which I thought about, is that the developments in technology in the last decade have been so dramatic, right? I mean, if I took this mobile phone and I went to my grandmother and said that, look, here's a video call with my daughter who's sitting halfway across the world, she'd think it's magic, right? And the danger is when technology becomes indistinguishable from magic, right? Then you have, so I think at some level you need people to be aware of how things around them work, how the technology evolves and does things, and hence you've got to get the underlying science also correct. The other thing is that, the problem I saw is that science is unfortunately treated as something in the textbook, something that's, things to be learned from a textbook. It's not the exploration of the wonderful world we live in, and that world could be, a flower outside or the leaf outside on the tree over there. It could be a planet circling a star in a galaxy far away. I mean, it could be anything. And we are just intrinsically curious and want to find out how things work. And the more we find out, the more questions we have. And that's how we, this process is sort of lost, right? It's this gospel of information that's given to you. And that, I think, is very dangerous. So we try to change that. We're trying, I would say. We're trying. I don't know if it'll succeed or not. To try and make it much more exploratory and let people get the idea of what is science. If that works, I'd be very happy. And for that, I think sometimes you have to just switch off. And to switch off, I don't know. I like to go for long walks. When I was in college, I used to go to the mountains and try and not mountain climbing. I mean, I don't want to go to where it's high enough that there's snow and something. I like it when it's below there, where you have, where there are villages, where there are people, where there are flowers, where there are animals, where there's grass, there is something. I mean, that's more. But where it's quiet and peaceful and you can walk around.
You can disconnect a little bit.
You can disconnect. These days, it's just mostly long walks on the streets of Mumbai. I try and complete the marathon every year. It also requires me to then take a little bit more care of myself. I like music. I mean, I like classical music because I find it's more. I like the complexity of it. I mean, it's like not complexity, but I think if I look at the sciences, I don't know if this makes sense. I mean, there is physics, there is mathematics, and then there is music. To sort of figure out why does something sound pleasing, what kind of note combinations will be there, what kind of patterns do you create. I mean, after all, science is looking and mathematics is looking at patterns. We're looking at patterns in nature, we're looking at patterns in something, and for me, you're looking at patterns in music when you listen to music, or at least classical music, at least.
Classical Indian music.
Classical Indian, classical Western. These are the only two things that I really know much about. Classical Indian also has different styles and different genres and things like this. Maybe classical Western does. I'm just not aware of it. I think it's a very creative thing, which can be relaxing if necessary, can be uplifting if necessary. So I've never understood how music affects me, how it affects people, etc. But it does affect you. I know that. I mean, I can use it to fall asleep. I can use it to, get excited. So I don't know. So music is one thing. I like to cook. So I like to cook every evening. Something which started in grad school actually, because in those days it was very simple. I mean, I couldn't afford to eat outside, and also, after a day in the lab, this was relaxing, and it's also an extension of trying to be the chemist. I'm not a traditional, not the traditional cookbook kind of cook. I'm a high-speed cook, if I may call myself that. We will cut, my wife and me both, we are sort of partners in crime. We will cut onions, dice them up and freeze them for the week on the Sunday. We will crush tomatoes in the mixer and put them into ice cube trays and freeze them so that we have these little cubes of tomatoes to be dumped in whenever we need to make a quick gravy. So we do a lot of our homework and pre-processing and things like that so that we can come home in the evening and very quickly dish up something. Because, I mean, we don't have time for the traditional from scratch, make a meal every day. But then we do like to sort of make something fresh every day, but with some amount of preparation. So that also is, I mean, I think I like cooking, I like music, I like walking, I like doing things. I like to take photographs. I mean, that's something I like. I don't know why. Of course, I guess I know why, because one of the things that was always available that you could get without having to reserve it a week in advance was the dark room in the dorm where I lived. Okay. Of course, it was the days of black and white film, and you had to dip it in some stinky solutions and dry it up and do things, but you could play with things and you could, have fun.
So that's where that started. Right.
And then, of course, when I went to the US, then I saved up and I got a SLR camera with the lens and all that, and then I figured out that it was a bad decision because after a few years you realize that there was no point optimizing on the hardware so much, because the film that you were using, the software costs, the consumables cost of film and processing and all that was actually much more, though it was in small chunks and you didn't feel it. But and then somehow when I got back, things had gone digital and I sort of lost it at that point. So I do not have a DSLR now, and the only camera I have is the one on my phone in the pocket, but that still works.
Works well, then.
Yeah.
Great. Well, good balance, good work life, and
yeah, because I think
balance.
Unless you have, you need something to take your mind off work. Otherwise, you'll go mad.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, nothing spectacular, but
very nice. Well, thank you very much, Arnab. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
It's been fun talking to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for joining us for this InterDialogue. You can subscribe to be notified of future episodes and by following us on our social media channels at the InterPlex. Visit our website, theinterplex.org, for more interdisciplinary and intercultural content and to join our growing collaborative community.